All right, we're recording the second episode of this podcast. What do we call it, Menno?
It's time.
It's
That's
it's time for the podcast.
it's time with it's time and manner.
It's
It's time
time.
podcast.
Sure. I
That's
I don't have
yeah,
a name
that's
for it.
no, that's a pretty good name. Your name is a pretty good name for the podcast.
All right. Well, I will go with that as of now. So we're just having a conversation about how you are now going to Steamfest. So again, congrats for that. When is it happening? Again, November, right?
November. It's like on the 7th of November. I gotta double check, but I know it's like 4 weeks away, basically. So
And you live in
whatever you say,
Florida.
you're gonna do.
You live in
I do.
Florida. I don't imagine you have a lot of winter coats.
No, I was actually thinking about that yesterday. And I was telling Uncle like I don't know what I'm gonna do because I have one winter coat, but it's not really that badass. So I might just have to borrow one from my brother, which is somewhat my size, and see if because he used to live in Kentucky. So
Kentucky is still not like East Coast cold. You gotta go to like a Burlington coat factory or something, get like a real thick one, I'd imagine.
maybe so, but or I could just brave it out. 50 degrees, I can do it. That's what they say it's gonna be. You can do
Okay.
it.
Well, I wouldn't recommend so.
I'm such a Floridian, man. 50 degrees for me is death.
Mm,
Like I'm gonna be with a little portable heater. Wherever I go, I'll be like, hey, where's the plug, man? Where's
yes.
the plug?
I've
It's gonna
seen
be me.
I've seen some of those memes where when it snowed in Texas, just a little bit, and people went crazy on the highways. Have you seen those?
I no, but I can imagine it. I mean, Texas is also hot all the time, so
And obviously
we're used to
they have zero
can't
experience
stand it.
driving in snow. But hey, I'm sure you'll think about it. I planted the seed, so think about it.
Yeah.
So the topic of this podcast, I very recently got introduced to this, and it seems like you already knew about it. This phenomena called Bitcoin time traveler. When did you learn about it, and how did you learn it?
Well, I have a friend who's been into crypto forever.
Hmm.
I guess he got in like in 2010, which is pretty. Like he is of the crypto people that I've met, the crypto people that I now call friends. He's the an OG, because like I don't know if 2009 is when Bitcoin was quote unquote born, but
Hmm.
uh, that was for a very very small group of nerds, and somehow some way he got involved in 2010.
I don't think you could even buy Bitcoin for the longest time, right? You couldn't buy it.
I think that's correct. I think you couldn't buy it. There was no exchanges said or anything like that. That makes a lot of sense. But well, the ones that are just getting into the crypto sphere right now, they might be blown away to hear this for the first time. But back then, you could mine thousands of bitcoins with your laptop. So as long as you knew how to use the software, you didn't require a crazy amount of money to mine bitcoins. Now nobody knew they were going to cost a lot of money. They were worth pennies. So
Right. See, that's
uh,
the advantage of the like the bleeding edge of technology. People who kind of are familiar with that, even before the early adopters. I would consider if of myself, if anything, early adopter. And I mean, people who live on the bleeding edge of tech um, do gain some time, but a lot of times they end up investing a lot of time into things that don't really amount to anything. So it's a risk benefit kind of a thing from my perspective.
the highest risk has the highest potential of reward, but also, it is the highest risk. So you have to think about all those people back then that were doing it in 2009 or 2010, maybe even all the way up until 2013 when things started to change. Um, but those people back then were straight out gambling, like
Hmm.
straight out, because there was nothing in the law. There was nothing in the mechanics of economics that would allow for this thing to ever work. So um, the only way that it stayed alive was through the personal convictions of some very, very emotional and passionate people. So like, and that's why we have these ideas today of like the crypto Jesuses, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously like Roger Ver and Charlie Lee and all these guys, because back then it really required more than just the tech. It required some sort of gospel, really. I don't even know if that's the
Yeah,
right word.
yeah. I mean, it grew from if I mean, cult is a negative word, but it was more or less like a cult of people who were disillusioned with the banking and economic system, and as it happens, things grow that way. And see, it is what you laid out is I totally agree with that, but at the same hand, it seems a bit ironical or amusing at a minimum that a lot of the same people or similar OGs are hoping and pushing for ETF. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And the ETF is basically inviting the Wall Street back into this world. I mean, it would push the prices up, but again, then we are prone to going back to the same central control, which kind of was the root cause of this all. Anyhow, so let's get into the time traveler thing. So you're saying one of your friend who was the Bitcoin OG introduced you to this, right?
Yeah, he sent it to me last year. I got involved with Bitcoin in 2017, so I guess you could say I'm barely an early adopter. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess I am. So when I first bought my first Bitcoin was like $3,800 or something like that, which right now seems like a steal. I would do anything to buy Bitcoin at that
How
price.
much was it?
Like 3,800 or so
Oh, okay.
when I first bought any Bitcoin. And I didn't buy a whole lot. I think I bought like $400 worth.
Mm-hmm.
But I was doing a lot of research back then. I am pretty much self-taught in almost everything, and I kept on reading and reading and reading. And one of the blogs I kept on finding on cryptocurrency information was from my friend. His name is he's gone from Steam now. He had some issues with some people and he left. But
Mm-hmm.
his name is Lexiconical,
Okay.
and so I would always end up in his blog and reading up on like the different currencies like DPoS, POS, like all because he that's what he liked to write about, and he's actually a very good writer. Funny enough, he stopped doing it, but whatever. Like he feels like he was a waste of his time.
How do you
I don't know.
spell his name? Is he wasn't Steam it, right?
Yeah, like imagine lexicon, and then
Lexion. Is that it?
yeah, and then ICAL.
ICAN.
Uh-huh.
Steam it lexiconical. Okay. Let's
Yeah,
see. When was the last time he was active? Oh,
it's been a
he's
while.
72 reputation, so he was quite active till one point.
Yeah, he used to be a whale back in the day.
Hey, look, he restreamed something 2 months back, so it's not like he's gone. People come back.
Yeah, well, but he powered down everything. He left like nothing in there.
Ah,
He
okay.
used to be he used to be a Nordka. Yeah, like
Mm.
250K or something like
So
that. And
just to conclude this lexiconical topic, if in one line you could summarize what was his main issue for leaving.
um, you know, it's
What
funny
one
you say
line?
it.
One you have to distill it in one line.
Okay, he did not understand the social dynamics of Steam. He understood all the technical, not the social.
That means he didn't know how to play the political games.
That's correct.
I mean, or it would appear then he got into conflict with other people. I would imagine.
Yeah,
Okay.
flag wars and everything.
Okay. All right. That it is what it is. So I have to bring back to conversation to the time traveler for Bitcoin. You got introduced to it by Lexiconical, and I was listening to one of these YouTube crypto channels recently. And the first time you hear about it, it's kind of amazing. Like, I'll give it a very quick read. So set up the context. So this guy on Reddit claims he's a time traveler from future, and he drops some details about Bitcoin. And this was 5 years back, right? So he says value of Bitcoin has increased by effect on average every year so far. Well, he's sending it from 2025. And he posted 5 years back. So he posted in 2013. He says every year Bitcoin has increased by a factor of 10 from $0.1 in 2010 to $1 in 2011 to 10, 2012 to $100 in 2013. This is where he's at. Hey, do you know if there's any way, before we go any further, if there is any way anybody could go in and edit a post on Reddit without anybody knowing it? Like, that would kind of undermine the whole thing, don't you think?
Yeah, no, you can't edit. And that account only has that one post, nothing else.
So what he said, he or she, is frozen in time, right? You know that. I don't know that, but you know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's frozen in time. It cannot be changed. It is what it is.
And if it was changed, it would show edits, right? Somewhere.
Yeah. It would show.
Okay, since it says
that account has no activity, just that one, and never again.
And since it says 5 years ago, mean that there has been no edits since then. Right. So this is the spooky part here. So he's writing it in 2013, and then he says there is a slight slowdown, value increased by a factor of 10 every 2 years. And so let's go to the last year, 2017. He says 10,000 in 2017. That's kind of where we were at. 100,000 in 2019, next year, and 1 million in 2021. Whoa. Okay, so it sounds exciting. A lot of people make such predictions, right? I can.
Let's not forget what's his face saying that he's gonna eat his member if it doesn't get there.
John McAfee, right?
Yeah, he says he'll eat it. He'll eat, like, I don't know. I think most people know this. Like, there's actually a website that tracks it, to see if he's gonna end up eating his own penis. If it doesn't hit the money, he said he's gonna eat it. That's how comfortable he is with that.
I think that's more of a metaphor, if anything. But John McAfee is not a credible.
About it. Yeah, he's crazy.
I mean, I like him as a character, like a zany, chaotic character. That's it. But the thing he says, maybe they were reliable in the past, but now it's just kind of like beyond the pale, at least for me. Anyhow, so this is the kind of crazy, spooky part. So from 2021 onwards, he says there is no good way of expressing Bitcoin's value in dollars, as dollar is no longer used. Whoa. Nor is any central bank issued currency for that matter. There are two main forms of wealth in today's world, land and cryptocurrency. I mean, it makes sense, but would it happen this early? Who knows? But let's go over some more spooky parts here. There are over 19 million Bitcoin known to be used in the world today. And we have 7 billion people. On average, you own 0.003. So if you have 0.001 Bitcoin, that's right. If you have that, you're rich. And he says he lives next to a guy who logged into his old Reddit account and somebody gave him a tip of 0.01 Bitcoin. And upon making this discovery, he bought an airline ticket, left his house without telling anyone, and went to a citadel. Now, this is where kind of things starts getting dystopian. And you know what? I can imagine that. Like, if I would say, to me, this sounds like a very creative fiction writer wrote this. But as we know, a lot of movies or books that we read in past kind of come true to a lot of extent, right? What is Citadel? You go ahead.
I don't know who said this first, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but this is like a famous line. This is sci-fi, and which is sci-fi and drama, fiction, really. Like all the genres of fiction, I think that's what it said, are nothing but representations of our imagination, and our imagination is our most powerful tool. So every single time we are thinking about creating something new, we employ the same tool that we easily dismiss when somebody is just speculating, writing a book or whatnot. So it's an interesting thing to think about, because like it's not so much that it's a phenomena, that the things that we dream of become reality years from now. That's actually the way it works, because you need to be able to imagine it in order for you to pursue achieving it.
Yeah. And if you think about it, like he's talking about a crystallization of things that are happening today as it is. Like he's talking about a citadel where if you, well, by the time Bitcoin became $1,000, service began to emerge for Bitcoin rich to protect themselves. They exist, I'm sure. He's basically saying that there's like what you say, there's a moat or there's a castle they built for rich people where if they're Bitcoin rich, they can go and live there. It's not that far removed from the world we live in today. Just it's a bigger citadel. Like if you live in first world, you're protected and sheltered from a lot of things that you won't be protected or sheltered from if you lived in a third world country or Middle East for that matter, right? So it's just like a condensation of that, if anything. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. It's pretty much we've always had a caste system.
Mm-hmm.
It's disguised, but it's all.
If anything, Bitcoin kind of accelerates that consolidation, right? The way he's writing it. In my world, soon to be your world, most governments no longer exist, as Bitcoin transactions are done anonymously, thus most governments can enforce no taxation on their citizens. Most of the success of Bitcoin is due to the fact Bitcoin turned out to be an effective method to hide your wealth from government, whereas people entering rogue states like Luxembourg, Monaco, Liechtenstein, if that's how it's pronounced, were followed by unmanned drones to ensure governments know who is hiding wealth. Well, I don't think this part has that much likelihood of becoming true, because governments have a lot of power to wield. More or less, it boils down to who has the guns. After a few layers of conversation, diplomatic transactions, trying to get people to obey the law, it boils down to who has the guns, right?
Yeah.
So if let's say Luxembourg or Monaco and these people are hiding people who are wanted, what is to stop for US or any other big country to kind of invade these smaller countries and take what they want? That's the way the world has worked for hundreds and thousands of years. So just because, go ahead.
No, I agree with you, but then the other point is, you will also have to look at that phrase and say, I don't know if this is entirely accurate, because it's saying that Bitcoin is completely anonymous.
Exactly.
And that's not entirely true anymore. Like it's pseudo-anonymous. So off and on ramps of Bitcoin are like, I guess if I was to create a wallet straight on the chain, and maybe I go in blockchain info and I create a wallet there, and I just imagine that I'm an awesome trader and I just trade and decentralized exchanges like CryptoBridge or something like that, something that is not KYC compliant.
Mm-hmm.
And I just accumulate Bitcoin and just put it there. I guess nobody would know that's mine.
But wait, how would you accumulate it?
I'm putting a complete hypothetical, but let's say that I bought myself right now 1 Bitcoin. That's it. All I bought 1 Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And I was to send it to a CryptoBridge or any decentralized exchange, let's just say.
But all I'm saying is even to earn that 1 Bitcoin, you have to transfer value from somewhere, either fiat or something else. So it starts somewhere. The trail starts somewhere.
But my point, there's a trail. But my point is that I could claim, right, that I lost it, and there's no way for them to check. And so the only time they would know, or anybody would know, would be if I use it to pay anything. And that's why it's pseudo-anonymous. So like if all of a sudden if all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I need to buy, I don't know, I'm gonna go to Overstock and buy myself a coat for my Steamfest trip. Well, there
Right.
you go. Now there's a trail. There's a name. There's you know what I mean. So it's not anonymous,
And,
and
and
they can see the address where it came from,
hmm
and they can see how much Bitcoin is in there. Like, that's the difference between, Bitcoin and Dash or Monero. Like if I were to send you some Monero, you don't know what address it came from. You just received it, and you would not know with the address that you received how much Monero I have on my wallet.
and what I'm saying is, even if total anonymity is possible, let's go with that hypothesis somehow, some way, because technology evolves. Let's just grant that. If we already know, quote unquote, rogue states called Luxembourg, Monaco, and the other countries, well, then they're prime targets to gain freedom and democracy from the American troops, just like Libya got democracy, Iraq got democracy. You know what I'm saying? Um, Anonymity is only valuable till you don't have to take shelter in a central state. Once you do that, once you know Luxembourg is sheltering all these anonymous people, well, it's a target-rich environment. It can be very easily taken down. If you look at history, gold, and Bitcoin is called to be liquid gold, was completely anonymous. Well, but then once word got out, which central entity has a lot of gold, well, guess what? It got raided and gold got taken away, right? So,
Yeah.
to me, I mean, it's no matter what we say at the end of the day, and that's the way things have worked in world for many, many years. It boils down to who has the bigger muscle power. All these things will melt away pretty fast, like the anonymity and whatever constructs we have. Like you must have heard of George Carlin's stand-up, right?
Yeah, I've loved George Carlin.
Right. So, like he says in his stand-up, like these rights that we think are God-given rights, they're not God-given. Nobody used to have them till, like, let's say if you go back 500, 600 years back. So these things that we have today, like freedom of speech and innocent until proven guilty, these are very recent things, and these can go away pretty fast as well. If we end up in a situation where governments no longer exist, at least not in the way that they're funded by taxation or citizens, well, guess what? Then it's basically a wild west, and the way it shakes out is whoever has guns ends up getting resources. At least that's been my learned experience.
Oh, 100%. And if you look at the history of capitalism is basically the opposition to that, or I guess you could say the normalization of that system, because before capitalism existed, right?
Right.
There was no such thing as human rights. Like none of that. Like there wasn't even deeds for lands. Like people just lived in the land, and the lord of the land, they would bring the whatever it is that they would work on the land, they would bring into the castle, whatever, the lord of the land, and then the lord of the land would commerce those things, and then in order for the villagers to have money, they would have to sell it to the lords, and if they needed more money to do stuff, then there would be the finance aspect right there at the end. But when the new economy was created, all of a sudden we have a system to where there's deeds and property rights,
Mm-hmm.
and human rights, and the whole thing got flipped on its head. So all of a sudden, oh look, you don't own things just because you went in there and killed the owner, and now,
Right.
and now it's yours. No, that doesn't work.
For most part,
It's a centralized
for
for
some,
the most part.
yeah,
There are parts of the world where it's still like that.
right,
There's a central authority, the lord of the land, like what was back then the lord of the land. Here would be the governments,
right,
are the ones that keep a ledger of what belongs to who, and things can be proven. So like nobody can just conquer a land. I can't just go to Utah and be like, okay, I declare this in the name of Florida. I'm gonna call this Florida. Like that cannot be done, regardless of.
at least within the citadel of USA.
Yes, but in a system that basically brings down governments, which is what the dystopian future here is basically trying to say, I
Right.
guess that would be the name of the land again,
And,
because
and in that sense, crypto's biggest threat is elimination of fiat. Like when fiat is eliminated out of the picture, governments who have the most muscle, central governments, well, they may not turn on its own people, they may turn on the neighbors, right? Tribalism. And in that sense, the biggest threat for crypto is to not evolve in a way that is complementary to fiat. And if fiat is eliminated, governments don't have anything to lose. So they have to go like imperialist route, the way we used to do things for the longest time.
I don't like what you're saying, but I can't disagree. It seems, yeah, I would be dishonest if I disagree.
So this is,
Like,
go ahead.
there's a lot of idealism when it comes to cryptocurrencies, and I have to learn myself to be pragmatic about the subject, because I understand the idealistic tendencies. That is where my mind goes.
Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about the need for regulation and how regulation is going to bring the whole thing into the fold, and I get people reacting negatively like I'm some sort of traitor. I get a little frustrated, and I go like, listen, I get you. I know where you're coming from. I get your passion, but I'm trying to be grounded.
Right.
Like this is, I don't see how this is not going to happen. And there's one or two ways. It's either going to happen in a way that benefits I guess the least disruptive way, which would be sensible regulation, or the opposite, which would be a chaotic freaking. You see what I mean? I mean,
Right.
That's where I am at the moment.
So yes, I mostly, well, not mostly, I 100% agree with you, because if it goes down the way that this guy is saying, Bitcoin time traveler, basically crypto goes rogue. It's and I think he talks about it further in this post as well. And let's get to that. That it's not good for overall humanity, if you will. So government tried to stay relevant in my society by buying Bitcoin, which basically increased the value of Bitcoin. Here are the four major players for who has the most Bitcoins: ASIC miner, IMF's Currency Stabilization Fund, government of Saudi Arabia, North Korean government. So this is again like the spooky part. There has been a lot of speculation that North Korea has been mining Bitcoin. Saudi Arabia, I can totally imagine they're mining Bitcoin as well, like solar power, free energy, and they have money to buy hardware. I can totally see them doing that. And it's a natural progression as well. Like North Korea is isolated from the world anyway, so this is their way of kind of integrating themselves, forcing themselves as an integration into the world. And have you heard of the news or speculation that a lot of Bitcoin is controlled by North Korea?
I've heard of that before. I don't know if I believe it. I think it's more likely than China has. That is pretending to be not cryptocurrency friendly, but actually has a lot of cryptocurrency. And the reason why I say this is because China does a couple of interesting things already. Like, if you just look at trade, like I'll give you a little piece of information that'll make your head wonder.
All right.
One of the biggest buyers of gold in the world is China. Right.
Right now, China, Russia are buying a lot of gold. Yeah, and Germany even.
How much? Yeah, you know how much gold China sells?
I don't know.
Nothing. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? You will never find a brick with the Chinese government stamp anywhere. So everything they get, they hodl. I'll use that word.
Right.
Now, if that doesn't tell you they're planning for something, I don't know.
They are OG hodlers without any doubt. So what they say North Korean government here might as well be like a China plus North Korea, because North Korea is like a satellite state of China anyways, right?
Yeah.
So if China wants to get some dirty work done, they can get it done through North Korea. So economic growth is down. If you own more than 0.01 Bitcoin, chances are you don't do anything with their money. There is no inflation, no incentive to invest your money. Just like medieval ages had no significant economic growth. Well, you know what else happened in medieval ages? A lot of war, a lot of pillaging. Because when there is so much inequality and disparity, we
Of
are
course, it's justified.
we are a little bit sophisticated monkeys, if anything, human
Yeah,
beings.
yeah.
So we tend to fight a lot once we see that the monkey next to us has a lot of food or resources or anything like that.
We don't. Yeah, it's true.
So what happened to the Winklevoss twins? The Winklevoss twins were among the first to die. That's kind of spooky. Creepy, one might say. After seeing the enormous damage done to the fabric of society, terrorist movement emerged that sought to hunt down and murder anyone known to have a large balance of Bitcoin. Okay, I can see that. Or believed to be responsible in any way for the development of cryptocurrency. Most people who own any significant amount of Bitcoin no longer speak to their families. That happens to rich people, right? Lost their friends because they had to change their IDs. It is suspected that 25% of Bitcoin rich actually physically tortured someone to get him to spill his password. I mean, we have done that.
That's already happening, yeah.
Humanity has done that over and over. It's just that we're replacing gold with Bitcoin in this example.
But that is happening already. Like, people are getting guns put there to the head to, give them the private keys. And there was cases of that.
You know Richard Hart, right?
No.
Richard Hart. He's also one of the cryptocurrency OG person. And
the cowboy guy, right?
The what guy? No, that's Jimmy Song, I think.
No, but Jimmy Song is the Asian cowboy.
Right.
Richard Hart. I think I know.
Let me show you. Have you seen his IATA rent? His IATA rent is kind of.
I call him cowboy. He looks like a country singer. Yeah, I know who it is.
Country singer. Yeah. I mean, his styling is a bit unique, to be polite. But overall, like he got a bunch of, like, look at this, the kind of stuff he wears. Unique, to say the least. Right, he's peacocking, if anything, right? But he has a lot of. Go ahead.
I don't appreciate him too much, I have to say. Like, I don't like his. Like, he's a smart man, but I don't like his style too much. But I respect his intellect.
I respect his intellect. He's not the most intellectual person in my reading. He's more of like a business guy. He got in at the right time and he has what he has, so good for him in that sense. But I would say one thing positive about him, he has a lot of common sense. So he's not like one of those ideologues of hey, Bitcoin will take over everything and fiat will die and so on. So when he got initially rich with Bitcoin, he moved to a third world country just to kind of take that whole route of no taxation is theft, so I'm going to go to a country where they don't tax me, blah, blah, blah. You know that, right? That kind of thinking. And he got robbed of a lot of stuff multiple times. So, yes, people who are known to be crypto rich and tend to move to countries where outside of US, basically a lawless country, they get robbed. And he moved back to US, from what I understand. Do you know which countries don't tax crypto? I just looked it up recently.
No, I don't know. Which ones?
Some of the decent ones are Singapore. Well, decent as in first world countries, I would say. Singapore, Germany. Then there are East European ones, Malta, and a couple more East European countries. I imagine UAE will also fall in that category, but I'm probably not going to live there anytime soon. Anyhow, so we already do torture for people to extract value from them in different ways. It's just, this is, okay, so here's the thing. This sentence here, if I can find it again.
Why didn't we abandon Bitcoin?
It is suspected that 25% of Bitcoin rich actually physically tortured someone to get him to spill his password. Right now, we do a centralized torture of vast masses of humanity to extract value from them, get oil or whatever we want, first world country.
Yeah.
This is more of a peer-to-peer torture.
Yeah.
So we have decentralized that.
Torture.
We have decentralized that, and we take matters in our hand, people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't we abandon Bitcoin and move to another system? Well, we tried, of course. We tried to step over to an inflationary cryptocurrency scheme. But nobody with an IQ above 70 was willing to step up first and volunteer. That's kind of already contradicted. There are a bunch of people who are already invested in Steam. But Steam's inflation also decreases every year. So
Yeah, but it's never zero. It's never going to go zero. The inflation is always going to maintain.
Right, but it goes down to almost to zero, 0.5.
0.9, I think.
0.5 or something. That's still pretty low.
Yeah, that's low.
It's much lower than where it started, 9.5 or something, right? So in Africa, survey shows an estimated 70% of people believe that Bitcoin was invented by the devil himself. Well, I imagine they think about a lot of stuff that happens today the same way. And there's a reason for that. It's a very sensitive issue that today is generally referred to as tragedy. African Union had ambitious plan to help its citizens be ready to step over to Bitcoin. Natural resources. It's basically replacing the word natural resources with Bitcoin. That's what has happened in Africa, right? So again, this looks like a creative writing with historical context and projecting a little bit. Government gave their own citizens cell phone for free, tied to government ID. Government sought to integrate Bitcoin into their economy. All went well until a tragedy, that is, a criminal organization believed to be located in Russia, exploited a hardware fault in the government-issued cell phone. An entire continent of Africa lost estimated 60% of its wealth in a period of 48 hours. We have already done that. Humanity, people, we've done that. We've drained all the resources from Africa, maybe not in 48 hours, maybe over 500 years or maybe more, right? There's not a lot left there just because of that. What followed was a period of chaos and civil war until Saudi Arabia and North Korean governments, two of the world's major superpowers due to their authoritarian political system's unique ability to adapt to Bitcoin challenge. This is where I think I can't see that happening, because they're authoritarian today. What is to say US or Australia or any other country won't go authoritarian on that when the environment is right? I think it will, if it goes to this. You might wonder, what is our plan now? It is, well, they're basically trying to, well, they have gotten hold of nuclear submarines. They will cut underwater cable between different continents. If this is what stops Bitcoin, center states would do it in a heartbeat, would have done it by now. They can destroy the satellites and the internet. Boom. Bitcoin is done, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's not going to happen.
No need to even attack any country per se. Just cut off their internet access completely. That can be done easily.
Yeah.
I hear,
Yeah, but the whole thing about destroying the internet is also kind of silly, because the best way I can describe the internet, a good analogy would be like a colony of ants. Yeah, you can imagine a gigantic colony of ants. Unless you freaking nuke it, like nuke it and destroy everything, you would have the hardest of time trying to control it. See what I mean?
I agree. So that's what I'm saying. It's impossible to control the internet. It's possible to block it completely from a certain area.
Yeah, that you could do. That already happens, actually.
That happens a lot in a lot of countries already. So I've heard there's our offline transaction mechanism for Bitcoin, that you can, some techie stuff, I don't know. I think there can be some workarounds for that, but that's like if you suppress it, if you make it inconvenient enough for people, it will kind of die out on its own. So if I'm central government and I want to kill all the crypto transaction, I can mandate the ISPs, just like they're mandated today. If they find anybody downloading movies illegally, they can send you a letter and ask you to stop doing it or you will be cut off, right? You know that.
Yeah.
I've had people, I know friends who were using BitTorrent or something, and Comcast sent them letters that either you stop doing it or we'll cut you off. So they can.
I have a friend of mine that got in legal trouble for downloading a shit ton of movies and hosting them.
Right. So if they can enforce it for digital media, why can't they enforce it for cryptocurrency? So I'm sure there's always a technological argument against it, that hey, you can do this or that, but I already see an implementation blocking certain kind of information. Why would it not be applicable to cryptocurrency? I can imagine it would be.
There's always going to be ways around it. Like even the whole thing about BitTorrent, there's a way around it. You can do VPNs. You know, what I mean, there's ways around it. But the I guess what's more relevant to the conversation is if you make it that difficult,
painful.
Yeah, that painful to do. Then you're basically lowering the niche to just the nerds, the ones that even know, like what.
And it's not scalable anymore at that point.
Yeah.
So, and I think somebody made a great point below this that which I don't completely understand, that if this person is from future, they can share some Bitcoin transaction hash or something like that, which I don't even know how to say it correctly, which will confirm, like they could look up in history. So they wrote it in 2013. They could look up 2014 Bitcoin transaction details and post that here. And that would confirm they're from future, right?
Yeah.
And that would kind of take away from the first thing that this person says. If you don't believe me, please move on, as I have no way of proving to you I'm really who I claim to be. There are many ways they can confirm they're a time traveler, right? But so is time travel possible? I don't think I'm smart enough to conclusively say a no or yes. So I would imagine it's possible. It may be improbable. But reading from this, it doesn't look like this person is a time traveler, but this person has a very creative imagination and grounded in historical context and able to write something so spooky, creepy, and so true, which holds true even today, 5 years later, right?
Yeah, but honestly, no, without a doubt, this person is highly intelligent. But
exactly.
But I can see somebody, like a few people that I met in my life, being able to pull off something like this. You know, being able to make something that convincing, like my father, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So. Because even like you said, proving that he's from the future, a very simple way of proving it, he could just show a little transaction ID number, like you said, from a block, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is like, okay, here's a transaction number from a block that happened in the year 2019.
Look, he says that I have no way of you could have printed the blockchain hashes of today and tomorrow. That would prove it, right? Yeah. I mean, it's very entertaining to read this without any doubt. And it's logical, it's well thought out, so I think a lot of things will be true in that sense. It may not be North Korea, it may not be Saudi Arabia, and it may not be even Central State, but a lot of people will get really, really rich. If they already have not become, they will become richer. And once you get beyond like a threshold, you get paranoid, and I mean, the first time I heard about panic room, I was like, what the hell is that? Rich people have that in their houses, right? So I'm like, I live in a 2-bedroom apartment. This is my panic room, the whole thing. Back when I first heard about it. So It's scientifically proven. I think I read recently that the richer you get, the more paranoid you get that somebody's gonna take your money, and the more.
Funny enough,
Go ahead.
funny enough, I've actually been to a house that has a panic room.
Rich people have it, I'm sure.
Yeah, kind of funny.
And you get
That doesn't seem like a life I want to live, though, doesn't it? Where you have to wonder if somebody's going to come stab you in the middle of the night.
there's like a range of money or wealth where you're not too rich that you can have your own army, and you are not too poor that you can't be paranoid about somebody coming and taking in your money. I think that's a very bad place to be. I don't know where that place is at. Maybe between 5 to 10 million net worth people who keep a lot of expensive stuff at home. I can see them being paranoid all the time. But if you have $1 billion, you can have security just parade around your place, and you have some security theater going on and feel better about that situation. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
100%.
that kind of concludes the. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You go ahead.
My conclusion on the whole thing, or my only conclusion I was going to say, it's all is BS.
Hmm.
The story, but it's pretty awesome.
It's BS
Now,
from the perspective of time
it's
travel.
not some guy from the future. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's some guy who is probably pretty good in sociology,
Right.
and also, obviously a cryptocurrency enthusiast.
Right.
Because this is also a reverse psychology that he's applying here, and I can read between the lines.
Right.
You know what this is supposed to generate is
FOMO.
FOMO.
Yes.
I just go, holy shit! So, like, what are you talking about? Like, if I have like 0.1 Bitcoin, just that, and I just hodl that shit, and by the year 2025, I'll be able to buy my own country. You know what I mean?
This is ninja guerrilla marketing, if anything.
Yeah.
Like, this is messing with people's brain, their psyche, their being. Just like mainstream media does it in the other direction, right? They FUD it all day long. This is like, all right, if you're gonna FUD it that way, we're gonna FOMO it this way.
Yeah.
Equal and exact opposite.
Now that being said, of course, that's not the what this podcast is all about. But before we close it, I am going to say this though. I don't think he's wrong about where we are going value wise of crypto. I think that's probably how it's going to happen. However, the one thing or the one distinction that I try to tell people, like at least in my assertion, I could be wrong. I'm just a human. I'm flawed. Is that we hold on to this idea that Bitcoin is going to be the king forever, and that may not be the truth.
Right.
It might be something else. But are we headed in that direction where we're changing the way that we perceive value, when we're changing the story? Because at the end of the day, money is just a story that we all agree on.
Mm-hmm.
So if more and more people are agreeing on the story of cryptocurrencies, even if it's called, Bitcoin Cash to make some maximalist angry.
Bcash.
It's called Decred.
It's called
It
Bcash.
doesn't matter. Bcash to make some Bitcoin Cash enthusiasts angry. Something at some point in time is going to be our US dollar at some point in time for the world. I don't know when. Now, I don't think that's going to completely destroy governments. What I think is going to happen, and here's my prediction, okay? And everybody's going to tell me, no, shut up, Manu. My prediction is there's going to be something called Fed coin at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Venezuela just released the petro.
Right.
You can look this up today.
I did.
You did? Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Backed by
Awesome,
natural resources and whatnot.
Yeah, but I wouldn't trust them because of the nature of that particular a particular government. But I can see that's the first country. I can see other countries adopting that, and I can see the U.S. one day also adopting the Fed coin, and I can see us completely moving away from actual physical money, fiat, and having some sort of Fed coin that goes against cryptocurrencies and having the same socioeconomics that we have today, just without any physicality. There are some countries already in the world that don't have cash.
Mm-hmm.
They exist. And they actually print some money, but nobody uses it. And if you were to show up to a store and be like, here you go, let me pay. Some European countries.
Let me disagree with you a little bit. So I agree with you almost till 90% of what you said. The general trend of what this person is saying is correct. The actual currency may be different. The actual details may be different. It may not be as dystopian as this person is presenting. There may be some sense of control and system still in place. But I don't think any government-backed cryptocurrency will be trusted ever, because the reason cryptocurrency existed or started was distrust of government and their control and their ability to devalue the currency people are holding. I don't think the issue of transferring money taking 2 to 3 days and not being able to have your own bank, this and that is as critical as the fact that no central entity can affect the value of Bitcoin in the sense that by printing more or printing less. I think that's where it started. That's the basic premise of it. People don't trust a central entity, especially a government, which can be influenced politically by rich people very easily, to be able to invest in an instrument. I do, however, think that whatever cryptocurrency ends up becoming the winner, it will be heavily influenced by rich people. And it may be influenced indirectly by having rules made by government, which favors the rich people, more or less the way they do it today. Like, take for example, stock buyback and executive compensation in stocks, which is taxed at a really low percentage as compared to your salary. So those kind of like shenanigans will always be in place. But to maintain at least the illusion of decoupling of government control with cryptocurrency is central, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, pretty. I think I have to say that you put it a lot more realistic than I did.
Yeah, I mean, they can float a Fed coin, they can float Petro, but people don't trust governments. That's the basic problem. If we did, we wouldn't be talking about crypto today.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're almost hitting the 1 hour mark. And thank you for joining me, Mano. And best of luck for your preparation for the Steam Fest. Let's see if we can do one more before you take off.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. Well, we can do one in a week.
Yeah.
By the way,
Mm-hmm.
before you close this recording, or did you close it already?
No, this is going.
Okay. Are you gonna go to Steam Fest?
No, I'm not going.
Okay. Nobody upvote this post.
There are many reasons that I'm not going. Like I have a well thought out lame excuse book. Most of them are lame excuses. If I really wanted to go, I could. But I don't know. I don't feel like going. But many reasons. Let's put it that way. Do invest in a good winter coat. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna probably get it this weekend.
Okay, I'm gonna close the recording and going in 3, 2, 1 and gone.